That is a fax machine.
There's a fax machine.
Of course.
What's that? Oh!
Exactly.
What?
Where's all fight?